Right.
Where by contrast, if you think about an organization, it's an MSP, the help desk stuff is provided. Like you said, there's a tighter integration with your business, but the secret sauce really is in when we think about this technology evaluation and planning and understanding what the needs are for your business, because the needs for one business of the same type, and I'll just use maybe Big Brothers Big Sisters as an example. That's a well-known not-for-profit, and an organization in Duluth, Minnesota might have a different need than an organization in Dallas, Texas. So having those conversations and understanding what that technology roadmap is going to look like will likely get you working with an MSP or an organization similar to NetVPro is much more likely to get you what you need for your business, in my opinion. The other piece of that is guidance on procurement and setup, because depending on what you have going on in your space, I mean, you could be a not-for-profit who has HIPAA data, or you could be a not-for-profit that has PCI data. So if you have specialized needs, it probably isn't a bad idea to align yourself with a partner who can help you with a procurement strategy. Because as we think about it and we go through this and we see that places like TechSoup have things available, there's also places you can go to get refurbished hardware, right? We'll talk a little bit about that, but from a security standards, those types of things, it is likely good to work with a partner who can help you understand where it doesn't matter, or it's a good idea to get a refurbished piece of equipment, and where you might want to have something that's new or state of the art. So it's
Now,
probably a mixed bag.
with refurbished hardware, I was just reading a couple of days ago about an article about a new type of malware it's been around for a little while, but it hasn't been very popular, where it actually sticks the malware into your BIOS, which is really kind of scary because now you can replace your hard drive, reformat your hard drive, and you still have the virus.
If they stick malware in your BIOS, can you feel that?
Not
Does
really.
it
And there's
itch?
the problem. It
I had
it
I
can
had a
itch,
mal
but
I
you
had
can't scratch.
malware. I had malware in my BIOS once, and I had to go to the doctor and get them burn that off.
Yeah, there's a cream for that, I'm
The
sure.
cream, yeah, you get malware eosis.
Yeah. But so if you are buying refurbished equipment, don't get it from Jack down the street
Yeah,
because you don't know what you're getting.
I
It's
think
not been properly checked.
that's actually a good point. When you are working with and getting refurbished gear, you likely want to go to a known large um, uh, practitioner in the art, if you will. You probably don't want to meet Stan, who's got the plan in the tan van, where you got to go knock on the door 3 times.
Yeah,
You know,
Craigslist is not the place to go for
yeah.
refurbished.
So there are large national retailers who do refurbished hardware that are perfectly acceptable. They bring this gear in, they clean it up, right? They clean it, disinfect it, they make sure everything's working. We ourselves have some partnerships with some large retailers. They engineer and certify things like drives. They make sure there's no errors and those types of things. So the piece of equipment you're getting, it's kind of like a certified used car, right? Certified pre-owned used car,
Yeah.
right? And you get that,
NetVPro fax or Carfax or
right?
whatever.
Yeah, I like that NetVPro fax.
There you
But
go.
you have some assurance that this product has been gone through and it meets some standards and those types of things. So I think when you're thinking about refurbished hardware, there's kind of like, I think about it in 3 different ways. I think about it in servers and storage. Again, you can get that equipment for what I would say is a much lower price point. You can get same to similar performance for that price point. And like those things are already burned in general, those pieces of equipment. And a lot of times, if you're going to have a problem, you're going to have the problem right away, right? They're going to die off the shelf or something. These pieces have been used, and we know that they've been burned in. Kind of a known quantity a little bit. When we start thinking about the next class that I consider, workstations and laptops. Again, we can get a much better price point. You can commonly compare a $1,500 or $1,800 laptop, or even nowadays with the shortages, a $2,200 laptop for a device that might be $400. And if you're a not-for-profit and sometime go out and try to fundraise $800, right? It's meaningful. So if you can get the same to similar performance for a lower cost, a much lower cost, it's something to deeply consider. The other piece, and that you probably see I have on there, is that you can put lipstick on it. Now that's not literal, but what I mean by that is that you can get that lower cost device. Maybe you're able to find an i7 machine that has 4 gigs of RAM and a mechanical hard drive, right? And maybe you get that for $250. All right, well, you know, that might not be the person you want to take to prom, but if you put a little lipstick on it by way of added RAM and an SSD drive, now all of a sudden, it's looking pretty good. I might go on a date with that one.
Yeah,
So
went from a Yugo to
yeah,
something
to
a little better.
a Oldsmobile or a
Right,
Buick.
right.
It's not a Porsche, but I'll take a Buick.
Why not?
But that's the thing, is that you have the ability to take that device that maybe isn't 100% what you want, and for a minimal investment, you can make it into something that works well for your enterprise, right? And for the people, because when you think about a not-for-profit, people need to do the same, Word documents, Excel documents, all the things that everybody else is trying to do. But this gives you the ability to have that functionality, that capability for a lesser spend. Now, I will say, and the next column or the next item we think about is network equipment. I think network equipment is a good alternative in the used market because you can, a switch is a switch, ones and zeros move through wires. I think the one thing that draws pause a little bit for me in this space is just the security elements of it, and making sure that that piece of equipment you buy is patched or patchable and upgradable and supported. So
Right, the supported is a big piece. It's huge.
Right. So when we're thinking about network gear, a lot of times that's where I'll kind of take a look at it and say, well, what's the role? What are the requirements? And maybe in a network space, I mean, we might want to have newer equipment on a perimeter or someplace that's going to be serving a protective role, a prophylactic role, if you will. I think I get a double word score and extra points for using prophylactic in an acceptable way on a call. That's pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good, actually. In a security role, and then maybe you have kind of like a Tootsie Pop, the soft, chewy center with other equipment, but you want to have that protection on the exterior. Would you have any thoughts about that?
I'm right there with you. Yeah, Ken might be able to
I would
speak.
say, how about our esteemed panel? Ken, Mr. Romer, being the security professional he is, do you have any thoughts on that? Ken, have you ever had any fears about refurbished network equipment?
Yeah, I would. I mean, again, if you're looking at things that are going to get in the BIOS or the firmware, you really need to be careful and get it from a reliable source who has already wiped that out of and reloaded it, so reflashed it, so to speak.
Yep. I like that. I like that phraseology used there. A reliable source.
Yes.
I think that's an important thing. It's hard if you have a business that has security concerns or requirements. You just, from my perspective, you don't want to go to a garage sale and buy networking equipment. I don't feel comfortable with that. I feel comfortable with refurbished network equipment, but again, from that reliable source and of a certain amount of recency. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, one thing, there's been issues with, and it's mostly surrounding IoT, but it's pretty much the same kind of stuff, where people are buying locks and things like that off of Craigslist or some other site like that. And what happens is that lock was originally used to open and close someone's door, but when they sold the lock, it never lost connection to where that lock was located. So they still have access to get into the lock, whoever had it before. It also was kind enough to have a GPS feature so they would know exactly where it is. Kind of goes hand in hand with that stuff.
Oh,
Wow. Yeah, well, I think that lends to the fact that with the added layer of IoT, there's just more stuff to think about. And then I think the last thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is recycling and what to do, because I don't know that I've been to a customer of size that doesn't have a stack of stuff someplace that they don't really know what to do with. And I think that there are options there. One of the options is that, if you work with NetVPro, we're willing to help out with that electronic recycling stuff. We can help that primarily in the not-for-profit space. We don't do, like, if you're Toyota Motor Finance, for example, we probably will be challenged to take pallets and pallets of stuff out of your environment. But if you're, Holy Mother of the Blessed Day Church, and I made that up out the top of my head, so that's pretty good too. But if you're that organization, and you got a couple laptops, we definitely can help you out with that. And we want to help out with those things. So we have resources. And another source for how to recycling is what I call reclamation vendors. And you can feel free to correct me if that's the wrong terminology, but that's the way I describe them. So these are organizations or places that take all types of electronic gear, right? They'll take servers, network stuff, laptops, CRTs, they'll take those things.
they'll take
And
almost pretty much any electronics.
yeah, and a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times they'll have a grinder right on site, or a crusher right on site. And what they do is they'll take that unwanted gear, if there's not value to it, and they'll grind it up in little tiny pieces, and they'll harvest the valuable components off that, the metals, mostly golds and the metal contacts. So they'll harvest those, what I would say is probably non-ferrous metals, off of the electronic devices. So typically those types of places don't charge you to take that equipment. They'll just take it and like I said, grind it up and do it for themselves. If you are doing things like drives or any kind of storage, those types of things, I think you want to be sensitive to documenting that and getting a certificate of disposal from the organizations, just like you would from an e-recycler. But I think sometimes it becomes easy to take a pallet of junk and throw it on a loading dock, and then they grind it up and you kind of walk away pleased with yourself that you've gotten rid of that stuff. But on the other hand, you do need to document that especially for things that are covered, HIPAA covered or PCI, you want to document that those things were destroyed by serial number, and they should be able to easily do that and give you I call it a death certificate, but certificate of destruction for those things. And then we have their e-recyclers. So many recyclers will take electronic products, laptops, monitors, those types of things, and typically they'll have you weigh those, and then you have to pay a rate to dispose of them. So those types of retailers, or recyclers, while we want to recycle things, they will charge you to do that. So you want to be aware of the difference between what I call the reclamation vendors and the e-recyclers, because there's a cost factor there. I don't know. John, have you ever run into any other ones, or is that kind of?
I can think of one other company that does things. They're out of St. Paul, and they hire predominantly vets, and they get things in. People donate stuff to them. Companies donate stuff to them. They either repair it and sell it, resell it as a recycled unit, or they, they tear it down and do the reclamation piece to it.
Yep. And I,
And they have a couple of locations around town, and I've worked with them in the past, and they do a good job.
yep. And there are those throughout the country. And I think that, again, the important thing with something like that is to make sure that they're giving you a certificate of destruction on those things.
And they do, and there's a EPA certification involved, and it basically guarantees that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with that stuff.
Right.
And so that's a good thing to check into, whether or not it's being properly recycled.